And the question was concerning this right-of-way or this easement. Do we have a good drawing there? So that's the drawing we're looking at?
Yes, sir.
All right, next time I see you, I'm gonna bring you a laser print, pointer for you, okay?
I had one, batteries are dead.
All right, I'm just teasing. Go ahead. Can you show us on the map what we're talking about?
I'm not sure which way to say it, but here's the cul-de-sac, will be the proposed emergency access. It's actually the same road that they used to use for access to the pavilions and everything else up over the hill.
Okay. So, the easement from Route 88 to that cul-de-sac.
I don't know exactly where that stands.
So we don't know if there's agreement or not, correct, TJ?
That's what we need the agreement for, yes.
Also, now you were talking about an easement also going through the property. What were you talking about?
The current easement for the cell phone tower, which is located here, basically follows the roadway that came up past a couple of there was a pavilion in this area, I believe one over here. It kind of meandered up over the hill following the path that was to the existing pavilions that I'm not sure if one point in time they used to rent out the pavilions for different things. Is the path it used to follow. If the development goes through, the easement for Crown Castle to at least access their tower will come off of the top of Walter Long Road up over the hill to their plant, to their tower.
So that's what I'm saying. They're preserving the part between their property line and the highway, and they're extinguishing the easement once they get onto their property, because they have this new lot configuration and they're discontinuing the easement and relocating it over to Walter Long Road.
All right.
And I think all that just needs to be clarified in an agreement, Dennis, for how that is handled.
Because right now, it's confusing.
It's murky.
Because we're not actually extinguishing the easement on Mr. Lasante's property, because we don't own the property, so.
You don't have, there will be an easement agreement between the owner of that property and Ron, or whoever the developer is.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe
We
that's
don't,
Mr.
we
Ron.
don't have that yet.
Yeah, I have not seen that, but I'm not sure where that is in the discussion.
So that's the major issue we have right now. That has to be clarified.
I agree completely, yes.
And I agree with, I know TJ's brought that up several times to the developer, and I think both of us have been told that it's there, I just don't know if either one of us has seen it.
Could we note on that easement that nothing ever blocked it?
Well, that's gonna have to be part of it, because if that's an emergency access, we don't want, it has to be open, but there's gonna be some type of gate or something with a lock on it. And that gate's gonna, I guess they're gonna use something similar to a lockbox or something for the gate.
And I believe Michelle's comment is more, not so much the gate, make sure that it's written in the easement that the beach house doesn't use it for parking. But yeah, it would be something similar to a lockbox that, like I said, it's usually the HOA president and a couple of people for the HOA has the keys, then it's distributed to the local police force, which I believe that's on something about it.
I have another question.
Okay, Michelle has a question. Go ahead, Michelle.
Is the subdivision line, is it still going through a building? Will that be corrected?
So the building that you're talking about is not the restaurant itself, not the pavilion building, the beach house room, but it's the block building that's on the other side of the stream. And yes, this baffles me a little bit, but the subdivision that was drawn before goes through that block building, a small corner that goes through that block building. And there's a note on that subdivision, Chris, this is the Shea Development and Lasanti subdivision that sets forth the boundary that we're looking at now. There's a note on that subdivision that says that building will be demolished. And the property owner who owns the building signed off on the plat. So I believe that has been handled, but yes, to answer your question directly, there is a parcel line going through the building, and the drawing indicates that the building will be demolished. So
Yeah,
I think that's been taken care of.
like TJ mentioned, that all parties involved that have any, I guess I'd say, any rights to the building, signed off on the subdivision plan stating that it's to be raised.
Any further questions from any board members at this time? At this point in time, we'll open to questions from the public to Mr. Ham if they have any questions or concerns about this. In the first row, the gentleman with the Nike hat, do you have any questions?
Sir,
You state you have a question or not?
no, sir, not this month.
All right, you have a concern or anything?
Yes, sir, my name is Jimmy Roman, I'm with the church.
ROMAN?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Could you stand up, please, so I can see you
Hey, could
talking?
you speak loud also?
Yes, sir.
please?
How's that?
Thank you, sir.
I just, this may not be the venue, but, maybe during planning commission or other meeting, I had some, thoughts on the stormwater drainage. I thought there was some ponding stuff that could be alleviated, just some minor items like that. Again, I don't know if this is the venue to address that, but I had spoken to Ken earlier and asked if, Chris earlier, if we could talk later or off record or whatever.
Sir, what is your position with the church?
I'm a member.
Are you here officially on their behalf, or?
He's a volunteer helping with us.
All right. And your name, sir, is?
I'm Pastor Ken Barner.
How do you say that?
B is in basketball, Barner.
Okay. As I get older, my hearing's going also, I guess.
Sorry.
All right. Anything else, sir?
No,
Mr.
sir.
Roman? Thank you.
Thank you.
The gentleman sitting next to you with the brown coat and the orange, or whatever's shirt underneath it, no questions, comments? Sir, you have any questions or comments?
Nothing from me.
Sir, do you have any questions or comments?
I was wondering about those holding ponds.
So that would be part of a development situation. Land development, I would assume.
The stormwater management ponds? There's just one pond, right?
Why
So
is
your
there
name,
only
just for the
one?
record, that's right. Your name, sir, for the record.
Albert Senick,
How do you spell that, Pete?
SENIC,
And your address?
1504 Highland Drive.
You live at Scarmazy Development or
Yes,
a fancy place?
thank you. We have two holding ponds for 101 homes. How are you getting away with only one?
More, that's just what the design dictated. More than likely, our pond's probably the size of both of your ponds put together.
If I'm correct, TJ, retention or detention ponds, I keep getting them confused. Is based upon the size and so forth, there's some type of calculations for that?
Yes, there's specific calculation criteria to determine that. And I'm not the design engineer, Chris is, but, you know, speaking from a topography standpoint and the way that the land is situated there, everywhere where Chris and his developer are planning to develop basically flows down gradient towards Route 88 highway there in the stream there. So, whereas the Scarmazy plan of lots is somewhat different. There's, they're at the top of the hill there, and some of that drainage actually does flow to the back towards.
Yeah, we have a big one in the back. and
Yeah,
one
there's
out
a
front.
sizable pond in the back and a sizable pond in the front. So, you know, more than likely just design related in terms of where Chris and his team figured it was best to perform their stormwater management, handle their volume control and their rate control in that pond. And Dennis, to answer your question, yeah, there's specific design criteria in Union Township stormwater ordinance and also, you know, set forth by PADEP and administered by conservation districts for managing stormwater, which they've prepared a stormwater management plan which satisfies those entities.
And if we were to ever develop, which it really can't because it gets too steep, but the backside of the property, we would have a second pond,
More than
kind of on the
likely,
back,
right?
more than likely on the backside, because when you design the ponds, you try to keep the water going the direction that it's going before you start. And like TJ mentioned, pretty much all our water goes towards the old swimming pool.
And the other comment I made to the two people up front, that traffic study is outdated. We've moved in, they're building on Turkey Foot Road, all those homes out there.
Mhm.
And there's a lot more traffic just in the last 3 years. Cause I was number 3 moving in and he was number 2. So we've been there since the beginning of time.
When was that, by the way?
That was February 19th, what year was that? 3 or 23. And it should be done this summer.
You say it should be done this summer, what do you mean? You mean completed?
Completion of, buildings, yes, supposedly.
Alright.
But, that almost, needs a turning lane where we are in order to get out and to get in. And you're talking about the same situation down the road. That's gonna be a lot of stop and go traffic. They did put fast car lines in front of Tractor Supply, so that's gonna try to slow people down. But, it needs a lot more than just fast car lines.
Anything else, sir?
No, sir. Thank you.
You,
What was your name?
Albert Senick, S-E-N-I-C.
I got that, I couldn't remember.
Okay.
alright. Pastor, do you have any questions or comments? None?
No comment.
The gentleman sitting with the green hat with his mustache, any questions or comments?
No comments, sir.
I think there's a gentleman next to you with glasses.
Yeah,
Your
I'm
name?
also Highland Village.
State your
Joe-
name, sir.
Joe McKittrick.
Is it Joseph?
McKittrick,
Address?
1019 Courtyard Drive, Highland Village.
Go ahead, sir. Questions?
So just
Comments?
Just an additional comment on the traffic study. I will echo what my neighbor has just said. You know, the traffic is certainly picked up. And then the other thing with coming down Hidden Hollow, and if you're making a left-hand turn towards Tractor Supply, it's a bit of a blind corner there. And so the more traffic coming up that way, and as Al had mentioned, there's a lot of traffic coming down from the developments over around Turkey Foot, coming the opposite direction, you know, past there. And then the other comment would be with the businesses at the beach house, the tiki bar and what have you, when the traffic study is done, it should be done when those things are in full swing. During the season that they're open, the weekends that they're having hundreds of people there for a car show and different things, that all is part of that traffic study. Thank you.
Anything else, sir?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barn, any questions or comments? Mr. Jerry, any questions or comments? Both shook their head no? Okay.
What's their name?
Mr. Barn is B-A-R-N-A. Mr. Dare is D-A-E-R.
E-A-E-R-R.
Okay. All right. No other questions or comments from anybody in the public? We have the press, one second. We have the press, or any questions or comments? Your name, sir, for the record?
Paul Patera, P-A-T-E-R-R-A.
Ms. Puglisi, starting up, state your name.
Denise Puglisi, P-U-G-L-I-S-I, 4057 Heath Road, Finleyville, PA.
Any questions or comments?
I have a question.
Sure.
There's 2 documents from Washington County Planning about the flooding situation whenever they took Mineral Beach out of the floodplain. Has everybody here seen that? Everybody working on this stuff? TJ, you gentlemen, have y'all seen those documents? Yes?
I
No?
believe so, yes.
Okay,
That has nothing to do with anything? I'm just curious.
Is there, I remember something about floodplains being modified or something. Are you familiar with that, TJ?
Yeah, I believe, and again, this is before I was working for the township.
And before I worked for the township also.
But I do believe there was a letter of map revision that was submitted to FEMA pertaining to the floodway that's delineated. Chris has it delineated in green on this map conveniently, I believe. And there was a revision to the FEMA delineated floodplain or floodway?
Floodplain.
Floodplain.
There is no delineated floodplains for this area.
So,
What did you say? I'm sorry.
There's no delineated floodway for the area. There
It's
is
a floodplain.
There is a floodplain. Yeah, there was a letter of map revision done, submitted to FEMA. Actually, it was prior.
2020.
Yeah, it was prior. That was prior to us as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm to be honest, I'm not 100% sure who even prepared it. I
Harshman.
have seen the LOMAR come through. The main thing it actually removed was the swimming pool.
Did you read the comments about everything downstream getting flooded?
I have not, no. I didn't read the comments.
I'll give you the documents.
Well, there is no flood, if you, a floodway, would you explain what a floodway is to the folks here, TJ?
Yeah, sure. there's a difference between what they determine to be the floodplain and the floodway. It's based on amount of precipitation and the extents that the floodwaters may rise relative to the stream and the channel itself. So,
And you really can't build in the floodway.
or
because-
floodplain.
Well, if you build in a floodplain, I think the Floodplain Management Act came out, back in the 1980s or something?
Mm-hmm.
And basically it set forth stipulations as how you build properties in a floodplain. You have all these special screws or pipes and all that stuff. You can build in a floodplain, but you have to go through a process to build.
Mhm.
And according to what I see right there's no houses or whatever in the floodplain, correct?
Correct. We are not impacting the revised floodplain based upon the letter of map revision. The floodway, you can't do anything in the state of Pennsylvania within the floodway without
Correct.
obtaining a chapter 105 permit through the DEP.
Correct. Okay.
Thank you.
I did bring up a comment during one of our back and forth reviews with Chris and his group about their proximity to the FEMA delineated floodplain, and requested that his group correspond with DEP and Conservation District to determine if there were any additional permitting requirements that would be needed subject to Chapter 105 of the Pennsylvania Code. And Chris's group did coordinate with Washington County Conservation District, and they did confirm that they have the permits that they need relative to their proximity to the floodplain. Is that correct, Chris?
That is correct. And just one note on that, it's not really, there is an active NPDS permit for this site. It's been approved. It was renewed in December along with every other general NPDS permit in the state of Pennsylvania.
What are you saying, MPDS?
NPDES.
All capital letters. Anything else, Mr. Ham?
I do not.
Anything else, any other questions of the board at this point in time for Mr. Ham? No, Ms. Dupree's asking about the Peach Creek sanitary flow. What's the question, Ms. Dupree?
I couldn't remember if in the beginning when you were discussing water and so forth, Peters Creek Sanitary can take the,
Yes. Well,
do you have like a developer's agreement with them that they?
we have a developer's agreement, and the sewage facility planning module has been approved by the DEP for the first phase, which is 75 lots. Whenever we come back in, if everything's approved for phase 2, and we create the subdivision for phase 2, we would have to reapply back through Peters Creek and DEP for the other 58 lots. That's just due to it's more due to the fact that Peters Creek flows from Peters Creek to South Park to Jefferson Hills and to Clarion, and everyone's under a consent order from the DEP. So they allow so many taps per year, a new tap. So we constantly work with the authorities that are under consent orders. They usually ask us, when are you looking for phase 2? And simply tell them we're probably looking at 2027. They apply to the DEP to allocate taps to them, and then we will apply to obtain the taps.
Okay, but you don't have a developer's agreement yet.
No, we do have a developer's
You
agreement.
do.
Yeah, you actually, with Peters Creek, you have to sign the developer's agreement before they will sign the sewage facility.
3 years
Planning
ago, I
module.
saw you at a Peters Creek Sanitary
Yep.
meeting about ductile pipes and fill, and then it seemed like it was all.
Yeah, that, to be honest, that might be one thing that does change, kind of, not that it has much bearing on this, is they did allow us to go from ductile iron pipe to SDR 26, mostly because at the time you just couldn't get ductile iron pipe. More than likely, we probably will have to use some ductile iron pipe due to some of the depths, but that's more of a Peters Creek and land development issue. But no, we do have approved sanitary flows for this and an approved sanitary layout design from Peters Creek.
Based upon that question, is there, and I've been involved with too many sewage systems in my lifetime. Is there capacity, the line servicing that proposed development, phase 1 and phase 2 cumulative, is there enough capacity in the trunk line to service that whole development?
I believe so, because
You believe so, or do you know?
Peters Creek never brought up any issues of a capacity issue in their line for that trunk line. And even though we only got the first 75 lots approved under DEP planning, they are aware that there is 112, well, at the time it was 112, now it's 113 lots. And they did not express any concerns about any future overload of that trunk line.
Okay, and so the total development that's being presented to the township right now is how many lots?
113,
Now, is there still pickleball court there, it's taken out?
it's gone.
So swimming pool?
That's what we.
Dennis,
Yes.
and they want to, I know that the tap allotment for Peters Creek this year is 200 taps. It's up from last year, and, you may wanna check with them about a capacity letter.
Okay.
Most developers I've seen, usually get capacity letters.
See, that's what I think, you're right, that this, we should have that to be accompanying this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you,
Yes, yeah, I will check on that.
so what I suggest you do we have a copy of the developers agreement between PCSA and Ron? So, Mr. Ham, I'm gonna request on behalf of the board that we get a capacity letter, which, Mr. Snyder is correct, there should be a capacity letter for that development from PCSA. And there should, we also like to have a copy of that developers agreement between PCSA and Mr. Braun. When you receive those, could you forward those over to the township engineer, TJ?
Yeah, I will also re-forward the approved planning, I think you should
That's what I
have a
have,
copy.
the
But
planning.
I'll re-forward another copy.
If you could, please, and then TJ, forward that copy to each supervisor, and myself.
Dennis, if I recall correct, that capacity letter also includes, clerk municipal authority, accepting the sewage that comes from.
That's what the capacity letter, that's what
It's
he
a good point, I'm glad
stated.
you mentioned that tonight.
I think I mentioned it, he worded it different.
He's a better wordsmith than you, I
He's a
guess.
better wordsmith.
Yeah, and like I said, we actually do already have capacity letters like I said, for the first 75, from Peters Creek, from Jefferson Hills, from South Park, and from Clarion.
South Park, and then all the way to Peters Creek.
No, we don't have to buy them up front.
All right, one at a time, please. Okay, anything else for Mr. Ham? I'll ask Mr. Seiler,
Good.
Mr. Hanford, any more questions for?
I have one thing. They're not gonna add water going down into the floodplain, are they?
They should have a stormwater management plan that minimizes the impact of any, water going in, correct, TJ?
Cause it's not handled now.
I was up at Canton Township the other day, we have flooding there along, I guess the Bronson House or somewhere down there. We have major issues with businesses getting flooded. It's a major impact right now we're dealing with. So maybe that's something we have to take a look at down the road, because over in Canton Township, we have businesses being flooded because of the Churches Creek.
Sins of the past. I mean, honestly, that's what it.
And now Canton Township is having to put in a detention pond to cure some of the problems. It's costly,
I was flooded by this immediately.
but that's something I think we should take a
Originally,
look at.
it's all
in the
fixed
future.
now, but.
The requirements for stormwater that we talked about briefly earlier for both the township and for the state require that your post-development stormwater flow, your amount of volume that you're releasing, and the rate at which you release it back to the receiving water be reduced below the pre-construction determination. So as part of the design for Chris's stormwater pond, he's computed the discharge rates and the discharge volume for the stormwater that's released from his pond, and those calculations demonstrate that they are lower than what's making it to the stream at this time. So that, Carl, to answer your question, that's Pennsylvania law as well as Union Township ordinance, that he make the situation no worse than it is now. In fact, make sure that his discharge is less than what makes it there today.
We need to have that, because now we don't have the proper
Right.
situation.
Right, and to Dennis's point, there's remedial action that you can take once you have a problem. Places will, build stormwater ponds, they'll implement release rates for future development that say you can only release 90% of the flow that's getting there now, 80%, however restrictive you want to be. But again, you're kind of trying to make up for development that was done before any of these current stormwater regulations are in place, and that's a difficult thing to do. But his calculations demonstrate that for this housing plan, no more quantity volume of runoff and a slower discharge rate are proposed as a result of the construction of the streets and the houses and what have you, so.
TJ, did they do the calculations on the completed project or just the first phase?
They did everything, Larry, it's both phases, right, Chris?
Yeah, it's the entire build out.
Anything further, Carl? Carl, anything further?
okay now.
But a good question though.
Yeah, great question.
Suzanne, any questions? Michelle, any questions? Mr. Spear, any questions?
No.
All right. So, we reached that stage. Now, we're gonna give Mr. Stevens his opportunity to go through his exhibits and what his position is on the application. Mr. Ham, you can stand there, you can sit down, it's up to you.
Well, the good news about going last is that we've already talked about a lot of the stuff that's on my list.
All right, there is, most of the exhibits are actually exhibits that you submitted.
Mhm.
And except for like the proof of publication and so forth, so.
So I'm gonna mainly draw the board's attention to our office's letter from October 8th of 2024, which is the most recent review that we've done. The first page basically summarizes the history as we understand it and the back and forth that Bankston has had with Chris.
And this would be exhibit C.
Thank you.
All right, go ahead.
The comments begin on the second page. The first comment under subdivision and land development talks about the paperwork that's required to set forth the new homeowners association, the HOA covenants and documents. A performance bond will be required that the developer posts with the township for all of the improvements which are intended to be public. And as Dennis mentioned this earlier, but we will need to enter into a developer's agreement with the developer, which outlines everybody's responsibilities relative to the project that we're discussing here. The second comment on my list we talked about already, but essentially that's the emergency access road and the specifics that we're looking for from the developer with respect to clarifying that easement. So there's a couple items there, and I won't read those, but that's what that comment entails. The third comment on the list is reference subdivision code 242-61. We're asking that the developer provide documentation from Pennsylvania American Water Company that their water system design is adequate and it meets to their approval, which they have done. So that comment has been resolved since October when we wrote this letter. Those are the letters I mentioned earlier that state the water pressure and the fire flow and the design is adequate and so forth. The fourth comment on the list, moving towards the bottom of page 2, deals with easements. There's the emergency access easement, which we've talked about at great length here. And then there's also 2 additional easements, which are a major consideration of this subdivision plat. Chris mentioned that they're relocating the remainder of the Crown Castle communication tower access easement to the other side, and it will be serviced from Walter Long Road and a new easement which is drawn from Walter Long Road to the pad. Our office is recommending that the developer provide a fully executed copy of the new easement agreement with the utility owner, stating that they're okay with relocating the easement that they have now. That should be obvious. And similarly, there is a 20-foot wide electric easement that runs from Route 88 kind of straight up the hill. Chris, can you point that out where that is? Basically, it serves that communication tower as well, to the best of our knowledge. And just based on its current alignment, Chris is proposing some housing lots there, so they've drawn up paperwork to relocate that easement as well to Walter Long Road and basically come out around their proposed housing layout to be able to relocate that. So instead of going straight up the hill, it'll make a couple 90 bends and jog back over and get to the communication tower. Similar to the Crown Castle thing, I think both of these easements that they're going to relocate, they're owned by others. There needs to be an agreement in place, an updated paperwork that these facility owners are okay with relocating their easements. At the bottom of page 2 starts the stormwater management comments. This sort of ties in with Carl's question from a moment ago, but there's 4 comments under the header Stormwater Management, Chapter 225. In my opinion, each of those comments have been adequately addressed by the developer. Chris and I have had some back and forth since this letter was written, and these items have been addressed under stormwater. So I think we can zip through that relatively quickly. On page 3 of 4, under the header Walter Long Road comments / outstanding issues, the first comment deals with Dennis's earlier point about the ownership of the roadway and who owns what with respect to Walter Long Road. And I believe that this has been also addressed by Chris and Keith Higgins and Kevin Braun when they produced the Walter Long Road lot line revision, which set forth the road dedication area. So I believe this has been addressed. Item 2 under Walter Long Road is the culvert / bridge. It's about 220 feet going up Walter Long Road off of Route 88. We talked about that already tonight. And I didn't make this point earlier, but the only other point I would make about the bridge, depending on which direction we go here, if it is going to be a fee per building lot that's set forth into an escrow account, we'll need some cost estimate from Chris's group, estimating the cost of the repairs to that bridge and some justification for that fee. So that's a specific of that mechanism that still needs to get resolved here, but it's something we shouldn't lose sight of either. I know I'm going quickly through this list. Are there any questions at this point?
Too far now.
Okay. Item 3, I know I talked about this with Chris quite a bit, but there's a water meter pit right now that exists under Walter Long Road. It's kind of across the way from the subway, and it's in the cartway. There's a steel lid on there, steel lid there. And Chris has a note on the drawing set now that meter pit will be relocated outside of the cartway. That was a concern of ours, that meter pit is within a township road potentially. So that's been taken care of on the drawing set, and that, as part of these improvements, that meter pit that's there now will be moved outside the cartway so that it's not a vehicle hazard situation.
If I can comment, that meter pit will actually be moved up to near the intersection of the development and Walter Long Road outside the cartway at that point, and then it will continue up the hill. And the meter pit will be completely removed from the cartway and within Walter Long Road down by the subway area.
So
Subway?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Sandwich.
okay. Oh,
Subway sandwich, not the subway. Yeah, we have a subway here. How does that affect the private water line of the Long manufacturing that comes from, I guess they would start,
It would, the new meter pit and all the connections would have to be made before the existing meter pit and anything would be terminated. So there would be no interruption to service to.
so their private line would go to wherever the meter pit.
I didn't know if I'm allowed to ask a question, but because
Sure,
that's
you
a
first out,
translate.
you'll have to state your name
Okay.
for the stenographer.
Name and address, stand up.
Albert
please.
Finney, 19 Walter Long. Albert Finney, 19 Walter Long Road. And my question was just because Walter Long has a transite line that goes up the hill for their water supply, so that will be terminated then, correct?
Yes,
From the bottom?
Yes.
Okay, I just because they're our neighbor, I wanna,
What he said was, is their private line will break off of the new water pit, it'll
Okay.
be higher up
Okay.
to the development entrance, and it will be done before it gets terminated to the old water pit
Okay.
that's down at the.
okay.
And in junction, we're actually we will tie into, according to the way we have the plans laid out with Pennsylvania America, we're tying into the water main on, I'm gonna slaughter the, Bloxham?
Mhm.
Bloxham.
Close enough.
Al lives right on the corner of
Yeah,
Bloxham.
because it's strange, the water main that feeds Bloxham actually comes straight from 88 to about halfway down. It actually does not come up Waterlong Road, which I'm not sure why, but we're gonna tie into that point, so basically so they can create a loop for everything. The water companies do try to loop the lines as much as possible.
Where is their sewer line? Their sewer line that comes down,
The private sewer line from the manufacturing company?
and from the church.
I'm not sure. Chris, did you locate that when you surveyed?
I don't think it's in the roadway, I'm not sure where it is.
I think it's right next to it, that's what I'm
No.
asking.
No.
No, you don't?
Past McCann Barner, Library Baptist, Crossroads Ministries. It goes out the backside of our property. Goes
So
out
I
down the-
think Walter Long Manufacturing comes down the road. I think I found something a year ago.
Now that you mention that, I remember seeing an old map.
I gave you their application to PCSA.
Yeah.
Just to be cognizant of, I think it runs right along the road, and I think it runs along the right-hand side of the road, which would be impacted from going in to the development.
Right-hand side as you're going up or down the hill?
Going up on the right.
Okay.
If I recall correctly, I think there's a manhole over there also. On that right side.
I think I had pulled that documentation, it's probably in the Mineral Beach file, but from when they got the storage application to PCSA and ran that lateral.
Mhm.
Remember, that was a concern, so if we could note that to make sure that their sewer lateral isn't impacted.
Yeah, make sure it's preserved, yeah. Yeah, it's a good point. Okay, anybody else before I resume?
Yes, one other question.
Yes.
About those lines going up to the tower. You said they're gonna be replaced, are they gonna be underground or above?
I believe they're underground.
They're gonna be underground.
I think at least a portion's gonna be like running all across the bottom, they're gonna be overhead like they are, but I believe once they get to Waterlong Road, they're gonna go under.
Okay.
If you could state your name once again, just for our
Albert
notes.
Senic, SENIC.
I'm sorry, no.
Good.
Back to you.
I'm good, I'm just making sure that stenographer's called. Okay, we talked about the bridge, we talked about the meter pit. Last comment on page 3, is the point that Michelle brought up earlier about, proposed improvements. At one time, there was a stormwater end wall and a riprap apron and some proposed grading contours that were shown outside of the existing road right away for Walter Long Road, which is owned, it's on property owned by people other than Kevin Braun, which is a point that we brought up in our October 8th letter. And I'll double check this, but my belief at this point is that everything that they're proposing to build now is within that road dedication easement area, which was thoroughly researched by Scott Kennedy and the counsel for Kevin Braun and presented to the board and approved and I believe recorded at this point. Subdivision was recorded.
I believe it's been recorded.
I know the township signed it here. I don't know if the developer actually went and recorded it. I can't speak for that, but I know that it was fully signed here by the township.
I'm almost positive Keith recorded it.
Okay, so, long story short, item 4 I think has been addressed by that Walter Long Road lot line revision subdivision. And then item 5, I've moved on to page 4 now. Under item 5, the PennDOT highway occupancy permit remains as an outstanding item. I think everybody acknowledges that. And then under the general comments section, it's a disclaimer comment more than anything else, Chris, but as a condition of any approval for the town by the township, our office would recommend that the developer get any other permits that are required at the federal level, the state level, approval by PCSA, and so forth. That's generic in nature. And then, the second comment under general comments is, the topic that Chris led with here today. You know, obviously as part of this conditional use, they're requesting some diminished, lot features, a lesser lot frontage. Typically in the RD district, you would need a 100-foot wide, lot line. In this case, they're proposing 57 feet. In the RD district, the minimum front yard setback, the front yard depth is required to be 50 feet. As part of this conditional use, they're requesting a 20-foot front yard setback. The minimum side yard setback for the RD district is traditionally 20 feet. And as part of this conditional use, they're requesting to reduce that to 7.5 feet. Which would leave you with 15 feet in between the two buildings.
Pack them in there.
And then, those were all mentioned by Chris earlier. The last point, and I don't know if you mentioned this or not, Chris, but they are requesting a modification from the ordinance for the horizontal and vertical curves for their street layouts. Traditionally, the subdivision ordinance here in the township requires that both for a horizontal curve and a vertical curve, that the center line radius be no lesser than 200 feet. And as part of this layout, they're requesting to reduce that to 150 feet. They want to tighten up their curves to maximize their buildable space. So I just wanted that point to be brought up as well, that they are requesting a modification from the typical roadway geometry that's standard in the township.
Do you recommend that?
There's a similar modification request being made at Tuscany Estates right now. And I'd have to go back and look at Highland Village to see what their curve radius is. It's a 25% reduction in center line radius going
They
from 200
requested
feet
to have
to.
sidewalks on
One at a
one side.
time, one at a time. Go ahead, keep going.
Just to finish the thought, they're essentially requesting a 25% reduction in the curve radius from 200 feet to 150 feet.
Go ahead, Mr. Sennick, what,
Yes, sir, will they have sidewalks at least on one side of the development?
Both sides.
Both sides.
Yeah, there might be a couple places that if there's not houses on both sides, I think it's down towards the cul-de-sac. I think we have one spot that we only have it on the house side. But yeah, there will be sidewalks in front of any residence.
so when I look at Exhibit C on page 4, those general situations,
Mhm.
they're making these requests for modifications as part of the conditional use?
That's my understanding, yes.
Is that correct, Mr. Hand?
Yeah, it's part of the conditional use PRD process.
All right, so when I look at those items, those requests, those A through D, when you look at section 101 section 1 of the conditional use, 280-101, that gives you your general standards, it talks about safety and all that. That might be further. It's okay, she just put her hand up to me, and she may throw something at either of you if you keep talking.
Hit the lady first.
Go ahead, Dennis.
All right, so with those requests that Mr. Ham is making on behalf of Ron, when you look at the standards set forth in 280-101, those are general standards, talk about safety. Do any of those requests have an effect upon any of those general standards of safety, etc.?
Well, you know, with respect to traffic safety, the road radius one, you know, a lot of the roads in this development are cul-de-sac roads, they're dead-end roads, they're not through roads. More than likely, you'll have they're gonna be 25-mile-an-hour posted speed limits, as is typical in the township. So traditionally, what I've seen when an applicant requests a modification, they'll also submit some justification as to why they're asking for the modification. And then certainly the board would, and our office would consider that request for a modification and either approve it or deny it. So that might be something that would be helpful with respect to the road radius geometry. Some justification as to why they want 150 feet as opposed to 200 feet. Truthfully,
See, that's what I'm concerned about, when I see these requests for the modification. When you look at the general standards set forth in 101.
Yeah.
The question is, what impact is that going to have? And like you stated, why do you want to have those modifications, Grant?
The setbacks are pretty obvious. If you don't apply for the setbacks, the PRD just doesn't make any sense. 'Cause,
Okay.
the radiuses, it's twofold. One, it's to actually be able to condense the whole site for a PRD, which is the purpose of the PRD, is to actually try to condense the site and leave as much open space as possible. Two, I'll have to double check what the original justification is from the modification, because that was done 5 years ago. But a lot of times we do that for traffic concern. The smaller radius is actually kind of on traffic, because like TJ mentioned, you just cannot drive as fast around the bends as much. So these are all cul-de-sac streets. I can't imagine anybody going down them very quickly. They're 25-mile-an-hour speeds.
just looking at your overall diagram here, Chris, do you know which one of these horizontal curves is the 150-foot radius?
I don't know off the top of my head. Oh,
It looks like the tightest horizontal curves are on cul-de-sac roads to begin.
Yeah, the horizontal, probably the 150 is most likely this and maybe this one coming on.
Doesn't look like you can jam more units into the parcel, I mean, America.
So, and the final point I'll make about you, Dennis, you asked me about the other modifications that are requested here. Just for context, I went back and did some research on some of the files that Bankson inherited when we started with Union Township. Chris's housing layout here, the minimum lot area would be approximately 5,800 square feet. At Highland Village, the minimum lot area is 7,200 square feet. The Mineral Beach lot width minimum is proposed as 57 feet. Highland Village is proposed as 55 feet. And Tuscany Estates proposed is 54 feet, by the way. Front yard setback between Tuscany Estates, Mineral Beach, and Highland Village are each 20 feet. The side yard setback for Mineral Beach is 7.5 feet or 15 feet in between the buildings. At Tuscany Estates, it's also proposed to be 7.5 feet for their future phases. And at Highland Village, it's 5 feet on the side yard setbacks.
I have a question. Can I talk? Other than, in my opinion, it could squeeze more units into a particular house, is there other legitimate questions that we have due to issues that the township would deal with as far as that? I'm worried about the 20 pounds per square inch on the discharge myself, but, I mean, is there, Dennis?
I'm concerned about that minimum horizontal, that's my major concern.
And why is that?
It has an effect on traffic and all that. So I just want to make sure that DJ says, based upon the request, that he's satisfied. When you look at section 101 of the code, he appears to say he's satisfied, correct?
Well, I'm saying, I think it'd be helpful to have some justification from the applicant as to why they're requesting 150 feet in lieu of 200 feet. That'd be my first component of my response. And then the second question is an obvious one that I would counter your point there, Dennis, is that it'd be nice to know which of the curves is proposed to be 150 feet. So I think we just need a little bit more information before I'm comfortable making a recommendation to the board that they grant a modification for a lesser curve radius.
That's the issue that I'm having right now. So why do you want to go make the modification to the radius?
Like I said, for two reasons. One is somewhat safety. Two is just to better fit the site. The curves are, I'll guarantee the curves are shown on the land development.
Yeah, I just don't remember which ones they are. I think they're on the profiles. I just don't, without digging through the set and spending more time.
Yes.
Two questions.
Sure.
Just based on other comments we've had from I correct in assuming there is no, on-street lighting? Street
Correct.
lighting? Not even a provision for it to be there and put in later,
No, we do not have any on-street lighting. Every house will have,
just a light
like,
on
yeah,
it, okay?
and if the
I
town,
forgot my second question.
I was gonna say, if the township wants to come back at a later time and put on-street parking in at their cost, I'm sure they can do it, but.
Sign up for that.
The street lamps, not street lights. So street lamps, but not street
There,
lights.
yeah, there's basically a lamp pole as part of
Yeah.
the landscaping package that,
There is a provision for a street
Lamp.
not so much a lamp, it's more of a yard lamp.
It's a street light, but it's a lamp, house lamp,
a
Yeah.
house lamp.
whatever they call it.
It's a lamp post in the front yard of each house.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the other question just popped up. When they do the HOP, and I agree with the gentleman who brought up the point that it should be done at the right time of the year. And I think it would wanna be when the, beach house and that was running all their activities, cause even you and I talked about the amount of noise that comes from down there, going up and down the highway. Have you thought at all about any of that noise from down there affecting people up in those lines?
That's more of a home builder question, and I'm sure they've looked at the noise, looked at the site, and they have signed off on it, and they're still willing to build the homes there.
I have a question about the side yard.
Yes,
So what were they, 7 or 7.5?
for this project,
Yes.
7.5 feet
And
side
that's
yard
what-
setback.
Tuscany.
That's what
Wow.
Tuscany is proposing on their phases that they're talking about coming in with
Me and
now.
Larry were looking at the ceiling tiles to see how far that would be. It's like from me to him, the first guy in the first row here.
Yeah,
So if each person has like an air conditioning unit going in, is there room enough, or, I believe, and don't mark me on this, but I believe like mobile homes federally can't be put closer than 20 feet. So, just
Have to be a
fire-wise,
fire
do you
pit.
have any any
Well, that's-
recommendations safety-wise for homes that close?
That, to be honest, the 7.5 foot setback for this type of development is fairly standard across the
Is
board.
it?
I mean,
Because, and the main reason why I know that is we run into storm sewer easements a lot of times with this, because most townships require a 20-foot minimum storm sewer easement, and a lot of places we do only have 15 feet between the buildings, so we can only provide 15-foot easement. So 7.5 is fairly standard across the, I'm not gonna say it's in everywhere, but the purpose of this plan is more of an entry-level house, so you do need a few bit, you need to be able to fit as many homes in it, so.
Maybe I'm just more rural, I guess, because it seems very close for
Well,
me, but I'm,
I mean, your point's a good one. If you compare it to a township road, it's 24 feet wide. And that accommodates 2 travel lanes, right? So you can assume that a travel lane's roughly 12 feet wide. So it's tight. I mean, if you have to take an oversized vehicle to the rear of a yard for whatever reason, whether that be fire, whether that be ambulance, I can't think of any other reasons off the top of my head,
but
but
it's not a non-standard width.
no, and you know, again, with the context here, there's side yard setbacks at Highland Village, which are 5 feet. So potentially only 10 feet in between the 2 buildings. So it's definitely something to think about. I mean, if you have air conditioning units off the side of a house, that's gonna neck that down even more. But, you know, the travel lane's 12 feet wide, so.
And also bring up, these particular dimensions haven't changed on this plan in 5 years.
It's a good point too.
So it's been reviewed thoroughly by everyone here, everyone before, and, you know, quite a few different people.
Any other questions for TJ from the board at this point in time?
No.
TJ, anything else you wanna add for tonight's meeting? You've gone through the main document.
That's correct. I have nothing further.
So, based upon, if you look at section 280-101, and standards and all that, so are there any issues concerning safety, except for traffic like we talked about today?
Not to my knowledge, no. I think we've covered the main
Okay.
requested modifications.
So no further questions from the board for TJ at all? At this point in time, anybody in the public have any questions? Mr. Patera? I'm sorry, I can't remember. Sir, you have any I can't remember your name.
No, sir.
Sir, any questions? Any questions? We're gonna start charging $5 a question.
Since you got the print there, what's the dimension of our roadways up in Highland Village?
24 feet.
24.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
24 feet is the standard roadway
Yeah,
width
seems
for
plenty
new
of room
roadways.
on our street, that worked out pretty well.
Yeah, so it's 24 feet wide, and then there's an 18-inch wedge curve on either side, so your total width is 27 feet.
Any more questions?
No more.
Any questions, sir? Questions? Pastor, any questions? Mr. Barney, any questions? Mr. Dick, I forgot you 2 ladies. I'm sorry.
No questions.
I'm sorry, I do apologize.
I have a
Your
question.
name?
Connie Troutman.
Okay.
I live at 129 Ferrazio Way. Your request for the ordinance to be changed from the minimum front yard depth from 50 feet to 20 feet. Does that 20 feet also include, you said, sidewalk? Or a sidewalk is going to be separate from the 20 feet?
That is 20 feet from the back of right of way, which the sidewalk will be within the right of way. So the 20 feet will be, the back curb's 27, it's 13, 6.5. So the houses will be 26.5 feet from back of curb.
26.5 feet from what?
Back of curb, if I did my math correct.
Back of curb.
Back of curb.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, no, closer than 26 feet. Obviously, we can push them back further, but closer than 26.5. Like I said, if I did my math correct in my head.
Ms. Troutman, any further questions?
No, thank you.
Ms. Savco, I do apologize. I kept looking this way, not at you, but I do apologize.
Any questions?
Ms. Puglisi, I did. Any questions?
No.
All right, so before we close proceeding, just so I understand, you're going to supplement this record with what, Mr. Ham?
My understanding looking through this is easement agreements,
Right.
justification for the modifications.
Correct. So when can you supplement those? What was the other issue, TJ? I thought there was a third issue.
We need a cost estimate for the bridge improvements.
Correct. There's a third item. So we need the easement agreement with your developer and whoever owns that property. And also with the issue concerning that radio tower, whatever you call that thing.
There's, my understanding, 3 issues. The access, power, Crown Castle.
Correct.
And, I forgot, now I remember what it was. PCSA, what do you call it? Capacity letter and also the agreement.
What about the PennDOT road study?
I think we already have this, don't we?
Yeah, we have one that's dated 2020, needs to be redone.
That's what we're required. That's part of your conditional use approval.
Yeah.
Whatever the legalities are, Dennis. it's
Yeah, because
somewhere
that
on
would
the
be a
side.
conditional use, that would, I don't wanna say push, but move towards the land development.
What if it doesn't pass, where they just gonna put in 2 streetlights or something?
Then we take that issue up at land development. Like I said, this approval doesn't grant us the right to build anything. It sets forth the parameters of what we're allowed to build to.
Mr. Free has a couple more questions.
So in reading the Pennsylvania American Water for the flow, so this isn't a developer's agreement. And it has received the, Pennsylvania American Water received the attached construction plans for technical review. Are there a copy of the plans you submitted to them?
TJ has them.
Yeah, they're in this drawing set. They're in the utility drawings, yes.
So, cause it states on here, this is in no way a developer's agreement.
No, and typically they will not enter into a developer's agreement until we get at least preliminary land development agreement from the township, mostly because they start getting in developers agreements on plans that are approved by the township that may never be built. So usually they like to see the township get to a certain part, they will review our plans, state our plans are adequately designed, but they do not, mostly it's to get into the cost and everything else, start following developers.
It states the letter of serviceability is not an approval of the facilities necessary to service this project.
That is
That
their-
concerned me.
That's their standard language on everything until you sign the developer's agreement. Because
Or does it constitute permission to construct said facilities?
what that basically covers is, once they approve the plan, it could be 10 years before we come back in and, 1,000 more homes go in and the water pressure drops. So that's kind of their language to cover themselves, stating that until we sign the developer's agreement, they're not gonna guarantee anything. And they won't do the developer's agreement until we get some approvals from here. It's one of those that someone's gotta approve something first.
We'll make that, we understand the process, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Any further questions or comments from anybody on the board? DJ?
No, sir.
All right, so you'll send him a letter, send him an email tomorrow, what you need from him? 'Cause I can't communicate because he has legal counsel. So the different items you need, the agreement, the letter, the developer's agreement, PCSA, and so forth.
Mhm.
Okay. And do you recommend, at this stage, do you recommend approval? What do you recommend on conditional use approval?
Well,
With caveats, I'm going to say.
yeah, definitely we've gone over a lengthy list of potential caveats, but,
Okay. And we have 45, if I'm correct, according to the ordinance here, we have 45 days to make a decision.
Mhm.
After today's date.
yeah, I would suggest that, so you mentioned this at the top, Dennis, but there's 3 applications that have been submitted by the developer here. The conditional use, which we're talking about, the subdivision, and the land development. And we've discussed with the developer that we can't approve the land development, obviously, before the conditional use gets approved. They need to be concurrent at the very least.
Correct.
So, I think it would be prudent to add all of the applications to the upcoming agenda for the planning commission to be reviewed and approved at the planning commission, and then ultimately discussed with the board of supervisors.
And keep in mind, underneath the Sunshine Act, 'cause I just had this issue the other day, that, I think it's 702 subparagraph D, the board has, since you had a hearing, the board has the opportunity to conduct quasi-judicial deliberations amongst themselves. There's case law to that effect also, that's the Milford Township case or something, so, but maybe, rather, before we author the documents like conditional use, I think it'd be prudent to have a meeting underneath the Sunshine Act. It's called quasi-judicial deliberations. I just gave that legal opinion today to somebody else, but we have that opportunity. We may want to do that before we give a final decision on these documents. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yes.
So do we?
So you're gonna make a motion to close the testimony.
Yeah, we would leave it open in case Kevin Braun wants to do any kind of testimony.
Does your client, well, he's not here, does your client want to testify at all?
I don't think,
I was only asking the question whether or not we would close or leave it open in case Kevin Braun would wanna do some sort of,
He's not here, I mean, I've seen
Yeah.
if
the opportunity.
you have the opportunity, so if you wanna make a motion at this point in time to close the testimony, the public hearing,
I'll make the motion.
Any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
and so before you leave,